And I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar titled Evolving into the Manager Role. We have presenter, Executive Leadership Coach and Professional Development Consultant, Mr. Brian Ackles. Brian, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and thank you all for joining into this. Evolving into the manager's role. This is something which is near and dear to my heart, of course, because at some point we were all asked or volunteered or voluntold or applied to become managers. And what we're going to talk about today is some of the issues and some of the challenges that managers and new managers face, and some of the things we, as new managers, you need to be aware of. So we'll start off looking at contrasting the functional versus the role-based views on management, just to sort of set the stage of what modern management looks like. Look at the power and the appreciation for what creating and maintaining a strong vision can do for you. Look at the characteristics that are required and needed by influential managers. And finally, we'll end off talking about communication and employee engagement and influence. So we'll get a kind of a rounded view of management and what new managers need to be concerned with. But let's jump in and start talking about the different aspects and the different ways of looking at management. So historically, managers have been defined by the function that they do. So this goes back to the beginning of the industrial age. Managers forecast, managers plan, managers organize, and it's all based on the idea of a command and control structure. So it's all about the manager being in charge, the manager doing things. That's been looked at in a number of different ways, starting back in the 70s and 80s and moving forward with a lot of research around the roles that managers actually have in the organization as opposed to the functions that they actually perform. And one way of looking at these roles is actually splitting it up into three major categories: the interpersonal roles, information roles, and decision roles. So a guy by the name of Dr. Henry Mintzberg from McGill University built this model with a number of his grad students a few years ago. And what he did is he sent his students out, his grad students out, to just observe what managers actually did on a given day or a given week, and came up with these buckets of roles. And it all starts off with the idea of formal authority. Somebody grants you the authority to be a manager. I can't think of any instance, unless you're starting your own company, where you automatically become a manager. You walk into the business one day and say, wow, I guess I'll be a manager today. Somebody gives you that promotion. So the formal authority comes from two ways. You're given the promotion to be a manager, but you're also accepted as the manager by the team that you're leading. So there's two aspects of it. We then get into looking at the roles that you play as a manager. In the interpersonal roles, which are very, very key, of course, you are the leader, and you are seen as the leader of the team and the leader of the group that you're managing. You are the liaison between the team and the group and the greater organization. So you provide that level of interaction between your group and the other groups of the other parts of the organization. You're also the figurehead of the team. So at more formal events, you'll be representing the team, and you'll be standing up and saying, you'll be accepting on the team's behalf, perhaps some congratulations, some awards, and these roles are very important as to be seen as you are the key figure within the team, but conversely, you are also not the most important person in the team. You're really the team's servant in this respect. So when you're standing up and accepting an award, you're not accepting the reward. You're accepting the reward on the team's behalf, or you're accepting the accolades on the team's behalf. And that's really a key point to keep in mind. Moving into the information roles, as a manager, you are constantly looking at sources of information that your team will need to have access to. So you're monitoring the environment, within the team, you're monitoring the environment within the organization, and you're also monitoring the environment in which you work as a company. So you're looking at the trade press, you're looking at industry news, and you're keeping an eye on what's actually happening in the world. And you're monitoring that information for things that are relevant that your team needs to have. And that moves you into the disseminator role, where you're sharing information with the team that they need to have to do their jobs well. The thing about information is it's only really powerful if you give it away. So you're gathering all this information, but you need to share that information with others for that information to be truly useful. Moving into the third of the information roles, which is the spokesperson. At some point, you're going to be representing the team to the other parts of the organization, to industry groups, to the customer. So you become the formal spokesperson. And this kind of ties in with the figurehead role as well. Moving into the last grouping of roles that you play as a manager, you look at the decision roles, because a lot of your work as a manager, of course, is making decisions and enabling others to make decisions. You're allocating resources. So, you're working with the team to determine who is best suited to pick up a particular task, and you're balancing priorities with that as well, because there's always challenges, there's always conflict between what people need your team to do and what you're actually capable of actually handling. There's only so many hours in a day, and we can't kill people with overwork. You're dealing with disturbances. There's always going to be conflict in the team, and as a manager, it's incumbent on you to manage those disturbances. You can't ignore them. They're not going to go away. So you become a bit of a negotiator with this as well. You're working with the people to come to resolution. Usually disturbances are result due to passion. People have passions about what they work with. So you're trying to manage that. You're also an entrepreneur in the decision roles. You're looking for new and better ways of doing things. And you're working with your team to encourage them to come up with new and better ways of doing things. If we don't look for new ways of doing things, then we can easily get into a rut. And that comes up to one of my favorite death phrases in an organization, and it's something which I strive very hard to get people to stop saying. When I hear the phrase, "we've always done it that way," that's a red flag to say they're not thinking. You're not looking for different and better ways of doing things. So you're trying to move things forward. The negotiator role within these decisional roles, the negotiator, you're always negotiating. You're negotiating for resources, you're negotiating for money, you're negotiating for time, you're negotiating with other parts of the organization for work to be done. So it's a constant blend of all of these roles that you take on as a manager. So it's a lot more complex than just going back and looking at the functional roles or the functions that managers do of forecasting, planning, and organizing. So these roles that you have take a lot more of your time and a lot more of your effort. One of the things that helps you as you move through this is looking at creating and building a vision with your team. And I can't stress enough that you're building the vision with your team. You're not delivering a vision to your team. This is a great way for new managers with teams to get the teams to start working together and working towards something which they agree is what they should be doing. The vision that you're building is designed to support what the organization is striving to achieve. So you've got an organizational strategy which has been developed. There's an organizational vision in place, typically in a mission statement. So you're building your team's vision to support that strategy and that vision from the greater organization. And you're doing it as a team. Now, if the team is building the vision, then that helps the team also buy in to the vision because it's theirs. They own it. They've created this. They said, yes, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to achieve. And the vision then becomes a powerful tool for you to use as you're making decisions and you're coming to points in a project, you're coming to points in your day-to-day work to say, if I do this, is this supporting the vision that we've created, or is it in opposition, or does it not really matter? So these use to help prioritize things as well. So what I want to do is just take a quick stop here and go into a class poll, Kelly. So if you could just take a look at this statement and choose which of these three statements really fits your environment.
All right, Brian, we're looking at about 28% for we have one, but no one really refers to it. 67% we have a vision that we refer to regularly, and 6% I think we made one but have no idea what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually extraordinarily pleased with those numbers. That has changed over the last 10 to 15 years. The numbers used to be skewed towards we have a vision, but no one really talks about it, or I think we made one, but nobody knows what it is. So it's really encouraging to see that organizations are creating visions, and visions are being referred to regularly, because this is the power of this. That's very refreshing. And I've got to say, I'm a little bit surprised by that, which, it's good for a Wednesday to be surprised. Vision, for those of you that are using this, is you know that it's all about communication. It's about communicating your vision. When you communicate your vision through your actions, you communicate the vision through your words, and you lead by example. You can't fake this. If you've created a vision with your team, then the team is supporting the vision. They see that you believe the vision by what you do as a manager. And this is very crucial. If you do things that are in opposition or don't support the vision, you're leading by example. So you're actually telling your team that the vision doesn't really matter. Obviously, most of you are a good percentage of you are referring to vision on a regular basis. So you are referring it, you're leading by example, or your managers are leading by example. So this is a very powerful way to keep your vision alive, and also it helps set the priorities. Now, one thing about vision before we leave this is the vision is not static. Visions can change and can modify. The same as corporate strategies will, modify as the years progress, and as time progresses. You can modify the vision with your team to support those changes in an organization. Organizations grow, organizations take on different products, different services. So, the work changes and the vision has to adapt to keep pace with the changes within the organization. So again, think about that process of maintaining the vision as you move forward. So let's talk about how leaders influence and what influence characteristic leaders should have. So there's been a lot of research done by James Coos and Barry Posner. They asked a lot of people to rank the characteristics and abilities that they associate with leadership. And they came up with the top 5. So the top 5 that were identified by others of what is crucial to successful leadership. Successful leaders model the way. So they live the vision. They model how they want the team to work. They inspire a shared vision. They challenge existing processes. And it's not to say that the processes need to be changed, but they question the process to say, does it need to be changed? We don't just blindly follow something because that's the way it's always been done. So again, that comes back to that death phrase I mentioned earlier. Successful leaders are enablers. Successful leaders don't tell people what to do. They enable others to act. And they encourage the heart, which is really, another way of putting this is, they encourage people's passions in their work. Working at things that you love to do, having passion about what you're doing, makes your work life a lot easier. And as managers, we have a passion for managing. I have a passion for managing people because I get to see people succeed beyond what they perceive they are capable of. And when you see that light in their eye, that they know that they've achieved something that they never thought they could do. And you've enabled them to do that by encouraging them, by providing them with the tools and services, creating a shared vision, encouraging that passion, providing, challenges to the process. That's your success as a manager. Your success is through others. So it's enabling others to act. So a bit more detailed qualities of a leader. Leaders are honest. They're seen to be honest. They're forward-looking, confident, inspiring, intelligent, fair-minded, broad-minded, supportive, straightforward, dependable, cooperative, determined, imaginative, ambitious, courageous, caring, mature, loyal, self-controlled, and independent. This is a list of qualities, if you look through this, to say, are we all of these things? Are you take an honest look in the mirror to say, do you touch all of these points? Are there areas where you can challenge yourself to improve those qualities for yourself? We're not all good at all of these things. Self-control, that can be a challenge for me sometimes when I see people doing, well, really silly and stupid things. I get frustrated easily, and I know that, so I constantly think about that. But being supportive, being straightforward with people, right? Don't beat around the bush. If you're seeing somebody doing something great, tell them. If you're seeing somebody that's going slightly off the rails, have a discussion with them. Don't wait for it to self-correct. Watch what's going on and learn what's going on with your people. Ambition. There's nothing wrong with being ambitious as a leader. You're ambitious, you're trying to grow your career, but you're also ambitious for your team. You're trying to get your group and your team to work and do better things as well, right? But I'm going to go back to the first point on this list, which is honest, right? As leaders and managers, we need to be honest, and we also need to be seen as being honest. And that's really, really critical as a manager and a leader. You can't fake this. You can't lie. You just won't get away with it in the long term. So continuing on with influences and looking at how you model the way. So address issues immediately as they come up. Listen to people. Coach and mentor people. And get to know your team. Knowing your team, knowing who they are, knowing what their passions are, what their likes and dislikes are, very, very critical. Provide that coaching and mentoring. And it's not for you necessarily to mentor your team. Perhaps it would be good to have mentors from other parts of the organization for certain people on your team as well. So look at those issues within your organization. Challenging the process. Question things that don't work. If there's a better way of doing something, try it. Take the chance. Look to others for ideas. Look for others for opinions. And that's just not others that's not just within your team. Certainly work with your team to look for better ways of doing things, but also ask your peers, ask other parts of the organization how they're doing things. You can learn from other parts of your organization. You can also learn from how other organizations do things as well. So you start to build that network within your industry group as well. Encourage this inner innovator, like innovation and being an entrepreneur. It's more than just improving a process. It can be a total redirection and restructuring. And if you look at what your vision is and what the goals are that you're trying to achieve, it may be that you need to do something completely different to achieve that. So think outside the box. Don't be afraid to take some risk within what you can do within your organization. And that it is very organizationally specific, but take some risk. Look for different ways of doing things, but research it properly. Don't just sort of run off and start doing something. Research it, plan it, but be bold about what you're doing as well. Look for innovation. Look for better ways of doing things. Look for different ways of doing things that are going to be better for your team, better for the organization, better for your customer primarily. And this is really what it comes back to. Enable others to act. Problems are learning opportunities, right? If somebody makes a mistake, and mistakes happen, we all make them. I made one the other day, I think, for the first time. You learn from them, right? They're just a different way of learning. Provide opportunities for training and development. People, particularly in this day and age with technology moving so quickly, constant training is required and constant development. As much as possible, push decision-making down into the team. So it's not necessary for you to make all the decisions. You have a level of expertise as a manager, but the people working for you have detailed expertise on particular areas to a level that you probably don't have. So they're the ones that can help make decisions more effectively based on, particular areas of expertise. So push that down into the team. And last, challenge your team to exceed the goals. You set goals for your team, absolutely. Set goals that are achievable and realistic, but also set goals and encourage people to stretch, right? Go beyond the goals that they've set for themselves. And this is a great way to encourage people to go above and beyond. And that can also tie into a rewards and recognition program, etc. But that's a topic for another conversation. Look for areas where you can create mutual respect. One of the things that I came across very early on in my career was a description of a manager who was really, really good at answering and responding to questions from their staff. And the bottom line of this manager was that they became world-class question answerers. But that's really not what you're trying to do. In response to questions that your staff has to you, turn it around. Ask them how they would tackle this, how they would resolve the issue. They may not know. You'll enter into a dialogue. Have you thought about, what do you think about, could we do it this way? And you try and start to pull that knowledge out of your people about how they might approach this. So you're providing advice, you're listening to your team, right? And you're encouraging people to think. Ideally, what you want is people to come to you and say, listen, I've identified this as a problem. Here's how I think we should resolve it. What do you think, boss? And that starts to then you know that your people are thinking and they're willing to come to you with potential solutions. Understand your team's workload. It can sometimes get really easily out of hand that someone ends up working way too much. And you need to be able to spread that workload around the team. If something isn't working well, intervene and change it. Trust your team to get the work done, right? So as you intervene and you change things, and you're talking with the team and you're getting their agreement to make these changes. But when you've assigned work and you've delegated work and you've empowered your people to do things, trust them to get on with the job. One of the worst things you can do is micromanage. You've hired smart people to do the work. Don't tell smart people how to work, right? They're going to tell you the best way to get things done. Now, there is a time when you need to more closely manage people, and that's traditionally when you're bringing in somebody that's fresh out of school or relatively new to the industry or new to the job function. Then you're managing a bit more closely until they get in tune and they get to grips and they get some experience. But that's a process of not micromanaging. That's a process of setting goals, more shorter term goals, and managing through that. Avoid the day-to-day, what are you doing? Here's how you do it. Avoid micromanaging. We all hate having it done to us. Don't do it to other people. And again, make celebrations part of your culture, encouraging this passion. Break up the routines. Try and create an environment where people want to come to work, where they feel respected, where they're motivated. It doesn't take very much for a celebration to be effective. It doesn't take very much to break up the routine for people. We have a vendor who so randomly shows up with hot food for us, not because he's expecting us to buy anything, but it helps to break up our team's work, and he knows this. So he's actually enabling our team to work better by sort of sporadically, randomly showing up out of the blue with hot food. And it's a really nice touch. So we've talked about influence, and one of the things that we look at when we talk about influence is persuasion. How do you persuade your team to do the things that you need them to do? So we're going to go way back in history and talk about the art of persuasion and look at Aristotle, who was arguably a master at the art of persuasion. And in his work, he's defined 3 important factors for persuasion: ethos, pathos, and logos. So credibility, emotions, and logic. And we'll walk through these one at a time. So let's look at ethos. So you have to be credible as a leader, credible as a manager. You're persuading people based on your character. So you're respectful and honest. You're going back to that list of quality of leaders from Coos and Posner. You're honest, you're respectful, and people will be more likely to follow you if you are that type of character. If you are seen as dishonest, if you are seen as being disrespectful, people will not trust you. People will question your motives. They may follow you, but they're going to follow you reluctantly. Right? You want to be credible. You want people to want to follow you with some level of passion. So your character convinces people that it's worth listening to you, worth listening to your advice, worth listening to your advice and direction and following you down a particular path. So ethos is probably the most important of the three areas that Aristotle developed, because it is about who you really are. It's a moral philosophy. So couple this now with the emotion, with pathos. So the emotional side, you persuade people by appealing to their emotions. So the classic example is politics. So when politicians want to gain support for something, they argue that it's for the children, it's for the mothers, it's for the fathers, it's for somebody else. We wouldn't want to hurt this segment. You wouldn't want to have this happen to you. So it's all about tying into emotions, and you're trying to tap into those emotional triggers. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? You're also, if you know your team and you know what their passions are, like passion is an emotion as well. So tying into that passion also helps you influence people to do the things that you need them to do. So it triggers, it captures their attention, and it enlists their support. But you've got to be very careful that it ties in with your honest, respectful character, because if it doesn't, then you start to lose that you start to lose that trust that ethos is giving you, and you lose that ability to influence based on your character. So again, you're tying these things together, but you don't want to abuse it. And if you look at people who have abused the passion, right, you see that you're less likely to trust them. And then you get into the last, which is the logical argument. Logic persuades people by appealing to their intellect, appealing to their base knowledge. Right? So you've got the emotional argument with pathos, you've got the character argument with ethos, but then you've got the logic. We have to do it this way, or it really needs to be done this way because, and you lay out the logical argument. Now, this works well with people who are rational, but not everybody reacts on a rational level. So as you move through with logic, again, it takes some care, and you have to know your team. If people are persuaded by logic, fantastic. But it's still tied in with your character. You're honest and you're reliable. You're appealing to their logic as opposed to their emotion, which is great because you know that they're logically thinking people. But if you're dealing with people who are less logical in their thinking, and that's, again, it's neither a good thing nor a bad thing, it's just the way people are, it's the way people think, right? Then you need to temper your logical arguments by emotions and your character and your credibility. So these are the arts of influence and persuasion that you need to also take on board as a manager. So if we look at some of the key principles of influence, and we start looking at the three big ones: reciprocation, commitment, and authority. So reciprocation is where people do something for you because you've already done something for them. So think of it as the way we earn trust. we earn trust for ourselves by first trusting others, right? So that's a reciprocal type of influence. So you're helping your team. You've gone out of your way to make sure that they've got the tools, that they've got the workplaces that they need, that they've got the information they need. And then people are going to be more willing to do things for you because you've already done that for them. Commitment, and this comes back to vision again. You're committed to the vision, and they see that you're committed to the vision. So people will commit to you and your vision as long as they see that you're committed to it. If they don't see that you're committed to what you're doing, if they don't see that in your actions, in your words, and how you work, then they're not going to follow you. They're not going to do it. You're going to have a harder time influencing them. There's also the issue of your authority. And this is not authority by, you shall do this or you will be punished authority. It's authority that you have through the nature of who you are, through the nature of how you're presented in the organization, about how you're accepted in the organization, about your knowledge and your experience, about how you talk to people. So if people truly believe that you know what you're talking about, and again, it's difficult to fake this. Some people can, but we won't talk about those. If you know what you're talking about and people accept that you know what you're talking about, they're more likely to believe you, and they're more likely to follow you, and they're more likely to be influenced by you, which is what we're trying to do. And as a manager, you need to understand that you're influencing people all the time. Look at communication and reasoning skills. One of the things that managers need to be able to do, of course, is ask really good questions. One of the things you're doing with your team when they come to you with questions is being able to turn that around and ask your team a really good question about, have you considered something? You have to be able to present clear arguments, clear and logical arguments, and going back again to Aristotle's three issues of ethos, pathos, and logos. And you need to be able to truly listen to others, not just hear them, but when somebody is speaking, concentrate on what they're saying and truly listen to them. Don't plan on what you're going to respond, how you're going to respond while they're talking. Just listen to them. When they finish speaking, then you can plan on how you're going to respond to them. But focus your attention on what people are saying. And this is harder than we think, because it's really, really easy to fall into the, well, this person's just given an example of that, so they're describing that now. How can I come back with that, and how can I support that, or how can I negate that, or how can I pump that up? You have to stop that monkey brain from happening. You just listen to what they're saying, take it all in, and then form a response once they finish speaking, and that's true listening skills. One of the other things that we're, of course, looking at with managers, so as you've done all of these things, you're influencing, you're persuading people, you're getting to know your team, is you're looking at the talent you have within the organization. Now, the dictionary definition of talent is pretty simple. It's a special ability that allows someone to do something well. So you have a talent as a manager. So that's a special ability that allows you to manage people well. So in business, this is about ability and skill. So as a manager, you have abilities and skills as a manager, but you're also looking for talent, and you're looking at talent management within your team. So there are certain requirements and attributes you have and that your team have. Requirements are the hard skills and the soft skills and the experience. Those are things that you can almost touch, if you will. But then you've got the attributes that you're trying to find in people as well and develop in people. And attributes are things like adaptability. How adaptable are people to change? How competent are they? People can have the skills, but they may not have the competency to actually use those skills properly. And how self-motivated are people? Some people don't motivate themselves very well, and they need to be motivated by others. And that's okay, but you're also trying to build that level of self-motivation within people. And this is all comes into talent management. So we start looking to the future with talent. So we're looking at how the organization is going to grow, what the future of the organization is going to be based on the talent that we have within the organization. And we use talent reviews and performance reviews to judge what we have available to us within the teams and within the organization, and also look at where we need to prioritize development. We need to look at where we need to change staffing levels, increase staffing levels, change the types of people that we have. And importantly, and more importantly, as we get move through time right now, and I'll come back to this in a minute, is we need to start creating succession plans for our key senior leaders. You know, talent reviews help to identify what our current leadership potential is within the team and what future leaders we may have available. So I just want to come back to succession planning for a moment, because we're facing a bit of a crux and a bit of a challenge right now, because we've got an aging baby boomer workforce, which is getting to a point where, you know, boomers are in leadership positions in organizations, and they're beginning to start to retire. And I know a lot of organizations don't have the plans in place on how they're going to be replaced. You know, who is going to step in to fulfill that role when, you know, Mary moves on, right? Mary finally retires, or John finally says, you know what, I've worked long enough, I'm going to enjoy the fruits of my labor and retire. So there has to be somebody in place that can step into that role that these people have, that these senior leaders have, or in fact that any leader or manager has, so that there is some level of continuity within the organization so they don't take a step back. And this ties into a number of other management models about team management as well. If you look at management as a team within the organization, you know, the management team goes through the same types of challenges that any team goes through: the forming, storming, norming, and performing. You may have heard that before. And if you change an element of the management team, their performance as a team may suffer because they've changed the dynamic within the team. So, but having a succession plan in place can help sort of mitigate those challenges and have people ready to step in who are also already familiar to the organization, familiar to the management team. So again, part of looking to the future and talent reviews is to identify these people, to start to groom people for succession for yourself. And it's not even about retirement for that matter. You have ambition as a manager and you're looking to move up the chain, you know, perhaps get that promotion, go to a more senior position. Well, when you leave your position, who's going to take your job? Particularly if you're being promoted into a position where, you know, you're going to take over from your boss, for instance. Well, someone who has to step into your position that can continue on the good work that you've done, so that when you're taking your more senior position, you can trust that the work that your team was doing is still going to be done by this new manager as well. So again, thinking and looking to the future. The other thing that we'll talk about very briefly, of course, and we've talked about this many times before, is about employee engagement. And the numbers don't change, right? And the challenge with these numbers is that they haven't changed since about 2000. So 50% or so of employees are just simply not engaged in the organization, and 17%, 18%, whatever, are actively disengaged. They're actively sabotaging the organization. So we want to move these numbers to where employees are engaged. We want to take that 50% number in particular and move them towards the engaged number, and we want to dramatically reduce the number of employees who are actively disengaged. So what makes people engaged? They know what their job is, they have a good manager, they know what the vision is, they buy into it, they live it. They have the tools and supplies they need, right? You've created an environment, they have the information that they need. So again, we go back to the roles that you play as a manager. People are recognized for their accomplishments. So we go back again to the management roles and the fact that you're encouraging the heart, right? You're celebrating accomplishments. People feel that their workmates care about them, right? You're going into an environment where people care about each other. There's a level of camaraderie within the organization. People have learning opportunities, and they're encouraged to learn new things and to develop. People feel that they have a voice. Now that voice in the company is a voice, it's a voice particularly maybe through you as a manager, but they're heard. They're not just, yeah, it's a great idea, whatever. It's a great idea. Let's talk about this. Let's see where we can go with this and have that discussion. Give people the time that they need to tell you their opinions, to let them share their ideas. And importantly, people have the opportunities to advance if they so want it. Right? A lot of people, get into a career and they want to go further places with their career. Most people do. So they've got to have those opportunities to advance within the organization. And that makes the employees feel engaged in the organization because it's fulfilling needs that they have. Right? So they become engaged. They're not actively sabotaging the organization if they have opportunities to advance and they believe the company cares for it. So the payoff is increased productivity. People take ownership of their work, which is critical. And you get this more diverse talent pool because you've got employees who are trained, they are developed, they're motivated. So they've got a wider range of skill sets to bring to the organization. A wider range of skill sets means you've got more talent to draw on, and a more diverse talent pool means that you're able to take on more things as an organization and achieve greater things for your customers. And again, let's always keep the customer in view of this as well. So we're going to end off talking about communications, because as a manager, arguably communications is what's going to make you successful and it's what's going to make your team successful. So you have a plan and a process in place to manage communications within your team and within the organization. And the thing is, you have to figure out what information the organization needs, and the organization in this case, in this instance, really isn't faceless. It's you need to know the people in the organization that need information from you and from your team. So who are those people? What information do they need to do their jobs effectively? And how are you going to get that information? And how are you going to supply that information? Now, one of the things that's a trap for managers, and it's a trap for new managers as well, and existing managers, is they write reports because the reports have always been written. That's not a good reason to write a report, to give it to somebody else. You write a report, or you find a way to give information to people because they need it to do their jobs. Now, I write a weekly report to my boss who consolidates from his team, and it goes to one member of the executive. I know that this particular executive reads the entire report and looks at all of the information in it and will question people on what they're doing. Not to micromanage, but because he has an interest in what's going on in the organization. So the information I'm supplying, I know is useful simply because I've asked them how they use the information. So think about that information flow and managing that communication flow. So I look at how often people need to get updates, and also look at how you get the information from your team and how you disseminate that information to others. You want to make this easy for people. We've all groaned and moaned about writing reports and what have you, so we need to find ways that are palatable to the team to get information. And arguably, one of the best ways to accomplish that is to ask the team how they want to share information with you. And it may be that they have better ways of doing it, that it's going to work for you and it's going to work for the team. You need to know what you need so you can let the team know what information you need from them, and not just what, but why. And if you can explain that, then they'll find a way to give you the information without making it seem too difficult for them. So this is all about managing communication. So again, you're looking at who needs it, the project sponsor, business owners, the controller, the finance groups, other project groups, and who needs it downstream, which is your customer. Your customer needs information from you as well. How do you get that information to them? Getting information to your team from the rest of the organization. And other groups that are relying on your team's outputs, they need to get information from your teams as well. So again, it's all about managing communications, understanding the organization, learning who needs what, and getting that information to them in an effective and efficient manner. So a few last words as we wrap this up. First and foremost, for the new managers listening in, for any manager, you've been promoted to a manager's role for a reason, right? You've been identified as having the talent and the skills to be a manager. You can learn how to be a great manager. These are skills which you can learn. There is no such thing as a born manager and a born leader. There are certain attributes that some people have that make it maybe easier for them to learn, but it's still learning skill. It takes time and it takes practice. The best managers I know are the ones that know that they don't know everything, and they're willing to keep learning and learning from other people. As you become a better manager, your team will become a better team. It's a one-to-one relationship, and it's a real win-win relationship. So again, the organization has put their trust in you. You're there for a reason. You can learn the skills to do this, and it's with practice, 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 you get better. So with that, I will say thank you very much, and I hope that you've enjoyed listening to me rattle on about evolving into the manager's role, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type those into the questions menu option right now, and we will address those in just a few minutes. I just wanted to remind you all that this webinar is just a short demonstration of what you can learn in a full-length class. And here at New Horizons, we believe that success begins with your professional enhancement. Our Center for Leadership Development is here to help you reach those objectives. So please visit our website at newhorizons.com for further information. If you go under the Courses and Certifications tab, you will see a direct link to our Center for Leadership and Development, where you can view any of our upcoming courses and pricing. Also, please reach out to your local New Horizons Center. And if you aren't familiar with who that is, you can log on to our website, newhorizons.com. You can also do a zip code search on our website to find your nearest center. Just wanted to remind everyone that I will be sending out a link. Today's session was recorded, so I'll send you all a link later today for you to review the recording for anything you may have missed or pass it on to any colleagues. It will be live for the next year, so you can always go back to it as well. So Brian, we do have a couple questions. First one, do you see it being difficult training new younger people to take the place of the baby boomers and senior leaders when they retire?
No, I don't see that as difficult at all. What I see it is as an opportunity for organizations to develop that leadership and management talent. And again, going back to basically the last slide in this little webinar, we can train people to become managers. It's a skill set that can be learned. The different generations, I mean, the millennials are tarred with are sort of tarred with a particular brush, which, is neither here nor there. Good managers are people that want to succeed and see their success as a success of others. So if you see that attribute in people, and if you see people that have that desire to be successful through the success of others, these are the people you want to develop and start developing into managers. And it's a training program, and there's lots of different skill sets. We've touched on just the very tip of the iceberg with management training on this webinar today. So there's lots of courses out there. There's lots of business skills to develop, finance, strategy, planning, just all of the soft skills and the hard skills of being a manager. So I don't see it as difficult. I just see it as something which organizations need to specifically invest their time and energies into.
Right. And can you provide some alternative means of communication aside from a monthly report?
Absolutely. So, I mean, monthly reports or written reports it's sort of that would be the sort of the traditional way of doing it. You can look at setting up wiki pages within your organization, setting up, if you've got SharePoint sites where the whole team has access to updating information, which then management also has access to seeing the information. So it can be an ongoing thing. It can be semi-regular. The bottom line of any information reporting, though, is that some parts of the organization do need specific pieces of information, and it's incumbent on you as a manager to be able to supply that information in whatever format they need to have it as well. So it's really working with the organization to find the best way to disseminate information around the organization. And with the use of technology tools now, yeah, it's a wide open story. We use SharePoint a lot at our organization. We also are getting into different styles of using messaging forums and open forums to disseminate information across the organization. So it all helps.
All right. And how do you break through an experienced manager to have them be open to new strategies?
Ooh, well, all managers should be open to new strategies, and that, that's my fundamental response to that. However, that being said, some people can get very stuck in their ways, and one of the things when you're dealing with people who have a lot of experience is to enter into a discussion with them about how they see the world, how they're viewing things moving into the future. And if they're open to having an honest dialogue and discussion, you can talk about, you know, there are maybe some different ways of looking at the world, different ways of doing things, different ways of different strategies that we might take to achieve this particular goal. What do you think, in your opinion? And you're asking their opinion, you're asking for their expertise. And as you start to enter into that discussion, as long as they're not completely closed-minded about new strategies, then they will hopefully start to see some benefit to different ways of doing things. Now, it's not every new strategy or new way of doing doing things is going to work, but it's great to enter into that dialogue with experienced people because they do bring a lot to the table. But sometimes they need a bit of a nudge and a push to sort of open their eyes to different ways of thinking.
All right. And can you name some of the daily challenges that a manager has? And is there a number of people that a manager can manage effectively?
I'll start with the second part of that first. So current wisdom is, sort of 10 to 12 people in a particular team. That would be on the high side. I know organizations, and we actually have some situations in the organization I work with right now where we've got a 60-to-1 management ratio, which is absolutely absurd. 8 to 10 people in a team is usually good. Getting up to 12, maybe 15, depending on the nature of the work, but that's really stretching it because you have to get to know your team. You have to be able to manage them at a level where you're comfortable with the work that they're doing, and you're able to keep not on top, but keep informed of the work that they're doing. So the more people you have, the more challenge that becomes. Now, the day-to-day tasks that you do as a manager, it varies. It's I have responsibilities to my team in terms of making sure that we have the money to do it. So I'm dealing with finance on a regular basis. Is it daily? Well, potentially. Looking at budgeting moving forward. There's always budget concerns and keeping on top of the budget, making sure that we're aligned with organizational priorities, so that there's a lot of conversations with other groups and other parts of the organization to make sure that what the team is doing is currently aligned with what's going on. Looking to the future, working with the organization to determine what's coming up next, because as a manager, you're more strategically focused and less tactically focused. The tactics really come down to what your team is doing. So there's many things that you're doing, but one of the biggest things that I see successful managers doing on a regular, everyday basis is they come into the office and they walk around and they say good morning to each one of their team members that's there. And they acknowledge, this is good morning, how you doing today? And that's it. But they they make the effort to make sure that they're engaging regularly every single day with people. And that's a successful leader and a successful manager.
All right, and this will be our last question, but how can you make the management role more dynamic to fit agile strategies and teams?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. How can you make the management role more dynamic to fit agile strategies and teams?
Agile strategies and teams.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So it's with agile strategies and with agile teams, managers take more of a role, more of a sort of a role where they're working with the team and with the product owners. When you're trying to develop something and develop into the sprints that you're working with, so managers need to be less focused on. What's the words I'm looking for here? They need to be less focused on the immediate end for an agile sprint, but more looking longer term to see where is this project likely to end up as we get to the end. So you need to be on top of things as they're changing and moving, of course, because that's the whole point of having an agile development process and an agile development environment. But you also need to be able to have some level of ability to project where the changes within each sprint, for instance, will leave you at the end of the project, because at some point each project will still end. Right? There's a finite cap on it, either in terms of time, money, or functionality. So the dynamics of management mean that you're looking at analyzing and looking at what's happening today and what's happening within this next short development time frame, and being able to view that dynamically as it changes through the sprint to see how that's going to affect the future and how that's going to affect the customer at the end. So it's really being able to take a lot more information in and analyze and use that information much more quickly.
Great. All right. That will conclude today's session. Brian, thank you so much for joining us again. We always love having you come present our webinars for us.
It's been my absolute pleasure, and to everybody, good luck. It's a great career.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. For more information, please visit our website at newhorizons.com. You can log on to our website and do a zip code search to find your nearest center and contact them for more information. As a reminder, I will send you all a link to view today's session recording for anything you may have missed, and you can access that at any time over the next few months. So thank you again, everyone. I hope you'll join us for future webinars. Take care. Have a great day.